Hello world! It's been like 18 months at least. I think, yeah, about a year and a half since I've been on YouTube. I used to make videos about sailing and I stopped doing that for a while. And now I'm living in my van and driving through the states, hitting up local mountains as I go, and on my way to Baja to do some freediving and kiteboarding and just beach living. So yeah, I'm gonna start making videos along the way about that. So if you want to follow along, follow along. I am right now just putting together a video of making my van, which has been a 3-year process, which sounds insane, but I've done it basically completely all by myself. Like, I had my friend Mullen help with like one of the doors, and it's pretty much it. I've built this whole thing completely solo, and yeah, so it took a while, but I also was working and living in the Caribbean part-time at the time and working different jobs, so it's been a process. I've been enjoying it on weekends and like small getaways in BC, but this is my first big road trip in it, so yeah. Anyways, here's the video of me building it. It's really bad. A lot of it was filmed like for Instagram stories, so it's just, if you want to watch it, if you want to see how it was built, do it, but it's not going to be the best quality video. So I started with a totally empty shell. It did have floors that I took out, and the first thing I did was apply the sound deadener material. I honestly don't know if that is necessary, but I did it anyways. And then next I got busy with the backup cam. That was super important as I was driving it around the city and parking it in busy areas, so I hooked that up right away. Then before I got too carried away, I wanted to lay everything out to see if it was really the right layout for me. So with the help of my mom, I actually made this pretty sweet cardboard layout to see if I liked everything, and I was pretty happy with it. It's pretty close to what the van looks like now, other than the 2 sinks. I have just one big sink. Next up, I went up on the roof while the weather was still nice. I sealed up the backup cam and then got busy laying out my solar panels and figuring out where the vents were gonna go. I then laid some cardboard out and got busy cutting the squares for the fan. I used a little vacuum to suck up all the metal shards, and I also taped a bag underneath to collect all the little metal bits to help with rust. The angle grinder definitely sprays a lot of little flecks everywhere. And then I used 4200, like a marine adhesive, to seal the vents on and adhere them. And then I figured out where I'm going to put the entry for the solar panel cables. Have these little like watertight glands that I put in. And before I could finish installing the vent fans, I had to make a little wood frame, just like screwed and glued that to the ceiling. Alright, today's the day, spray insulating. So I've got the van covered in plastic so that I don't get it on anything other than the ceiling. So I just used one of those Home Depot kits to do the ceiling. I kind of wish I just did the walls with the spray foam as well, because it ended up taking a long time to do it the way I did it, but I got it done. The floor I did kind of a funny way, because there's like 3 different levels of ridges on the floor. I used strips and then spray foam and then boards, and I ran like a stringer down the middle and on each side to screw the plywood floor to. And then I found this piece of vinyl flooring in my dad's friend's warehouse and decided to use it because it's pretty nice and it fit, and I just cut it out similar to match the floor that I had taken out and glued it down. I was working on this late at night out in this like farmland area where I worked on my van at the time, and it was pretty creepy. It was like getting pretty late, it was pretty cold out. I wanted to stay and keep a heater going in there to make sure that the floor glue would like cure, so that's what that heater's in there for. I ended up sleeping in the van on a camp mat with that propane heater going, and it was pretty sketchy because I was worried it was going to run out of oxygen. But it was pretty exciting to get to this step where I had a floor and little bulkhead to the front, and I could get started on the ceiling. So I glued and then screwed in these 1x3s so that I'd have something to affix the cedar to. Next, I ran the wires for the lights and everything else I needed, like the backup cam, anything else that would be going in the ceiling. I ran wires for, I think, like the toilet fan and the ceiling vents. Here I am cutting out a kind of spacer for the windows, something to screw the windows to. Cutting the holes for the windows was a little scary. I measured 1,000,000 times and traced it out another 100 times. And I had to cut more holes in the van. These ones are for a coolant hose to come from the engine to the water heater. And here I am finishing up these pieces to get ready for the ceiling. For the sidewalls, I just spray foamed and then stuck foam board up and then shoved wool in all the cavities. And here's the cedar ceiling getting started. So that cedar is an old fence from my friend's job that she took down, and I really liked the look of it just as is, so I didn't do anything to it. Just cleaned it up, brushed it off, and put it up. Once I had the ceiling done, I got the shower pan kind of laid out, the floor kind of laid out, started building little boxes and a little wall for the electrical area.
Feel like my heater will be a priority tomorrow because it's so cold that I don't know I haven't installed it yet.
It was pretty common for me to just be jumping around from job to job at this point. I could not seem to stick to one thing, but once I usually set my mind on something like the heater, I followed through pretty quickly. That was an important one at the time. Here's me hooking up the fuel pump. I tapped into I had an S-bar that wasn't working anymore, so I used that fuel line and just connected to that. On my friend's van, we had to actually drop the fuel tank and put an input in for it, so mine was a lot easier, definitely. Before installing it, I set it up so that I could test it and make sure everything worked. And in no time she was cooking, so I went to work putting her in. I didn't want to mount the heater directly to the wood subfloor, so I got this like metal turret thing and drilled a big 5-inch hole and then filled it with heat-proof silicone sealant and then put the turret in and then the heater. Getting that heater in was such a game changer as it was almost December at this point and I was working all the time on the van and just it was so nice to have the heat in there. My fuel line for the heater had to run over my exhaust pipe, so I put it inside a piece of brake line. This is like pretty heat resistant and so far has held up. It's 3 years later now, so I think it works. Once I had heat, I was excited to get real power set up. I got my inverter and charger and DC-DC and NPDT charger all set up. Started making cables. And then I got busy with some solar panels. Here I am making up a bunch of cables with MC4 connector ends for the solar panels to keep them watertight on the roof.
Blue dude, blue moon.
And here we are drilling more holes for the coolant lines. So my coolant lines were already connected to the old S-bar. It was like an engine block heater basically that circulated coolant to keep the engine warm when the van was off. The S-bar was no longer working, so I stole the diesel line for my fuel diesel heater, and I stole the coolant lines for my water heater. So I just connected them and ran them into the van and then connected them to the heater. Pretty straightforward.
Not blue. Not blue. Blue dude. Bad mood.
This hole was for my water fill.
Let's not talk about.
I feel like I kind of went backwards from the way I built this compared to other van builds I've seen. I had most of my systems in place and then started building the cabinetry and whatever furniture around that. I'm like more of a functional person, and I was really just thinking about the systems. Once I had them all in place, I was then thinking about how to make it cozy and comfortable.
Not blue.
I also had the least experience, I'd say, with carpentry and cutting wood and making things square. I actually struggled with that more than anything, but it was fun learning, and I definitely learned a lot. Don't worry, I ended up fixing this.
Since I ran into you, do you need a picture?
This live edge table is probably one of my favorite parts of the van and what I get the most compliments on.
It's hard to take one when your iPhone's full. Who's gonna save you? Who's gonna make you not blue? Not blue.
It took a lot of sanding to get to this point, but it was looking pretty fine. And then there's it after the final epoxy pour. Pretty damn good. Shout out to my friend Bree for letting me use her planer. Really helped me out with that one. I was kind of half moved into my van at this point, staying in it quite often and going on trips in it, which was kind of not ideal for building it, but at the same time I kind of figured out how I wanted things to be, so I'm glad I did use it as I was building it. So I was finally getting somewhere, and then come mid-February we took off to go work on the boat down in the Caribbean for a bit, and did that for a couple months. Came back in April, had some cushions made up, so I had a couch/bed, just enough to go visit some family on the island. I then spent the summer busy working on Venture, my sailing school in Horseshoe Bay, and didn't get back till the van till pretty much October. most of the electrical hooked up. I got the plumbing hooked up. And then I packed all my tools and my friend's stuff into the van and took off to go up to the Caribou to help her with her off-grid cabin. Then things got serious because we were getting ready to go back to the Caribbean again, so I started really cracking down on the van and getting somewhere. Pretty much finished the shower. At this point, I felt like it was fully functioning and pretty much almost, it wasn't done, but like close to done. All the electrical was done and tied up nicely. And then all the plumbing on the other side was all done. And I left some pipes and valves there in case I wanted to add a backdoor shower. Yeah, so that's the van build. I'm gonna do a proper van tour now that my van's fully set up and I'm all moved in. But yeah, I thought I'd get this one out there just because I had all this footage, and then I'm gonna start making videos along the way. So leave a comment if there's anything specific you want to know about the van or about my trip. Yeah. I also just realized, if you're following me on YouTube already, I have someone to introduce to you. This is Chewy, and he's my new best friend, and I'm gonna make a whole video just about him so you can learn all about him. Also, if you want more up-to-date stories, you can follow me on Instagram @KeyRink or on TikTok @KeyandChewy.